Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Dominic and I'd like to welcome you all to another episode of Spotlight Game of Thrones, the series in which we take a look at some of the characters who feature in the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, but are yet to be seen on the hit HBO show. So, if you love Game of Thrones and want to know more about the world and its characters outside of the TV show, you've come to the right place. In today's episode, we'll be continuing our look at the Targaryen dynasty. Last time we examined King Viserys Targaryen, first of his name, whose decisions led to a divide within House Targaryen that would go on to sow the seeds for civil war. Now, despite King Viserys' own wishes, the Targaryen king we're going to be discussing today is King Aegon II, whose reign goes hand in hand with a little family feud that would come to be known as the Dance of the Dragons. First things first, this video is primarily concerned with King Aegon II, and while we'll of course touch on some of the events that took place during the Dance of the Dragons, I won't be going into huge detail about the war itself. If you want a video like that where I get into the nitty-gritty of the conflict and take a look at all of the battles and the political maneuvering that took place across the war, then smash that like button and comment down below. Okay, now if you remember from the last episode, King Viserys maintained up until his death that Rhaenyra, his firstborn daughter and the only surviving child from his first marriage, was to be his successor and heir to the Iron Throne. However, when he went on to remarry and have 3 sons, the matter became, shall we say, complicated. As far as Viserys was concerned, he had made up his mind and Rhaenyra was still his heir, but as far as much of the realm was concerned, the male line took precedence over the female and his eldest son Aegon was considered the rightful heir. So as you can imagine, when King Viserys died, tensions within the realm were approaching boiling point. Now Prince Aegon resembled his father Viserys in appearance but not personality. Although he bonded with a dragon Sunfire at age 13 and would go on to carry the sword Blackfire, the blade of Aegon the Conqueror, he was also thought of as lazy, sullen and gluttonous, and known throughout the realm for his promiscuity. He had fathered a number of bastards. In fact, when he learned of his father's death, he was in bed with a paramour instead of his wife. Now it should be noted that Prince Aegon didn't even particularly want the crown at first, and seemed willing to comply with his father's wishes and surrender the throne to Princess Rhaenyra. However, upon the urging of his mother, the Dowager Queen Alicent Hightower, and Sir Criston Cole, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, who would eventually go on to earn the moniker the Kingmaker, Prince Aegon reluctantly accepted his birthright and ascended the Iron Throne, taking his sister Helena as his queen. Now obviously when Princess Rhaenyra found out about this, she was, I think it's fair to say, quite angry, and understandably so. She was at Dragonstone at the time and she was also with child. The news of Aegon's ascent, however, caused Rhaenyra to go into early labour, and when she finally gave birth, the child was a stillborn girl, malformed and monstrous. In her fury, she blamed the death of the babe on the newly crowned King Aegon, saying, "She was my only daughter and they killed her. They stole my crown and murdered my daughter and they shall answer for it." Princess Rhaenyra made ready for war. Now Rhaenyra didn't have the support throughout the realm that her brother King Aegon enjoyed, but she did have a few very powerful cards in her deck. First there was the Sea Snake, Lord Corlys Velaryon, one of the wealthiest men in all of Westeros, who also commanded the largest fleet. Then there was her uncle and husband Prince Daemon Targaryen, considered the most dangerous man in the realm, and finally there were her dragons. Where her brother Aegon only had 4 dragons that were able to fight at his disposal, Princess Rhaenyra had 12, 6 with riders and 6 without, and thus the lines in the sand were drawn and war was set to begin in earnest. Now it's believed that the very first murder to be carried out in the early days of the war was that of Lord Beesbury, the Master of Coin, who supposedly had his throat opened during a small council meeting by Sir Criston Cole after Beesbury had declared that Rhaenyra was indeed Viserys' rightful heir and that he would have no part in treason. But the first murders that really brought home the reality of the war were those of Rhaenyra's son Lucerys Velaryon and Aegon's son and heir Jaehaerys Targaryen. Young Lucerys had been sent to Storm's End in hope of swaying Boris Baratheon to his mother's cause, but when he got there he was met by Prince Aemond Targaryen, also known as Aemond One-Eye. You see, 9 years earlier Luke had cost Aemond his eye and Aemond wanted revenge. After Lucerys left Storm's End upon his young dragon Arax, he was hunted down by Aemond atop the mighty Vhagar. Both Lucerys and his dragon were killed in sight of Storm's End, their bodies sent plummeting into the sea. When Rhaenyra found out about this, she broke down in grief, but not her husband Prince Daemon. When he learned of Lucerys' death, he sent a message to Dragonstone saying, "An eye for for an eye, a son for a son. Lucerys will be avenged. If you remember from last week's episode on his brother Viserys, Prince Daemon had once been the captain of the City Watch. He was the one who formed the Gold Cloaks. This meant that he had many unsavoury friends in the stews and brothels of King's Landing, more than willing to do him a favour. Through his contacts, Daemon was able to hire a rat catcher and a brute known as Blood and Cheese to do his bidding. Because of his profession, the rat catcher knew all of the secret passages that Maegor the Cruel had built into the Red Keep, and so the two were able to come upon Queen Helena and her children unseen. They offered Aegon's wife a choice: which one of her sons would die. She wept and begged them to take her own life, but to no avail, and so she named Maelor, the youngest of the two, as she judged that he'd been too young to understand. But Blood and Cheese killed the eldest, Prince Jaehaerys, instead. They then fled with the young prince's head and left the queen to fall into madness. From here things only got worse, and the Targaryen dynasty would do unto itself irreparable damage. King Aegon II himself would eventually mount his dragon Sunfire and take to battle in a dragon fight alongside Prince Aemond and against Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, only to have Sunfire nearly lose a wing and he himself injured and burned so badly that his armour would fuse to his skin and he would spend the rest of his life in great pain. Due to the king's reliance on Milk of the Poppy, his brother, Prince Aemond, would serve as protector of the realm, but Aemond, who had killed Lucerys, and Prince Daemon, who had arranged the killing of Aegon's eldest son Jaehaerys, would eventually meet in a fearsome battle wherein both would perish alongside their dragons. Rhaenyra would eventually take King's Landing, causing King Aegon to flee to Dragonstone, but she would only hold the city for 6 months before being forced to flee herself after a riot led to an assault on the Dragon Pit and the deaths of even more Targaryen dragons at the hands of an angry mob of smallfolk. Rhaenyra also fled to Dragonstone, unaware of the coup that had taken place by her half-brother, the king. Rhaenyra was captured, judged a traitor, and fed to the king's dragon Sunfire, while her son, Prince Aegon the Young, watched. King Aegon II's wife, Queen Helena, driven to madness by the murder of her son Jaehaerys, committed suicide by throwing herself from Maegor's holdfast. The king's last surviving son Maelor was also killed by an angry mob, leaving only his daughter Jaehaera. The king returned to King's Landing in late 130 AC, however Rhaenyra's supporters still fought their cause for her son Aegon the Younger. Eventually, after drinking from a cup of wine to soothe his many aches and pains, King Aegon II was found poisoned in his litter. His only surviving daughter, Jaehaera, would be married to Rhaenyra's son Aegon the Younger in order to unite the disparate factions, but despite the resolution, the damage that had occurred as a result of the civil war proved cataclysmic. Where once the Targaryens had 20 plus dragons, they now only had 4, and the realm had bled profusely. They would never again be as powerful as they once were. Thank you everybody for watching this episode of Spotlight Game of Thrones. Remember, you can find previous episodes on the channel, as well as a playlist with all of Season 1's episodes included. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, as it really helps me out, and don't forget to check out the channel for much more Game of Thrones related content. Have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.